Pregnant wife invites millionaire husband to party, publicly posts a private video of him and Mistress. In a lavish mansion perched on the outskirts of Bel Air, Angela Redwood prepares to deliver the most shocking act of betrayal her high society world has ever witnessed. Her husband, Thomas Redwood, a millionaire real estate mogul, has no idea what awaits him at the seemingly innocent party she's hosting. With a poised smile and vengeance coursing through her veins, Angela stands ready to expose Thomas's darkest secret before the very audience that once envied her charmed life. In this tale of loyalty and deceit, family legacies and cunning games collide. What unfolds next will leave reputations shattered and hearts forever broken. Angela Redwood's world had always sparkled with promise. Born Angela Beaumont, she was the only daughter of Dr. Leonard Beaumont, a respected surgeon in Beverly Hills, and Lena Beaumont, a former Broadway dancer turned philanthropist. Angela's upbringing was the sort most could only dream of: music lessons in sunlit studios, horseback rides on weekends, and summers spent in the south of France. People who brushed shoulders with her at charity galas or society events often whispered she led a picture-perfect life, and, by all accounts, she did until the day she met Thomas Redwood. Thomas Redwood had been as charming as he was successful. He was the scion of Redwood Developments, a sprawling real estate empire founded by his late father, Charles Redwood. Tall, with dark, wavy hair and sharp grey eyes that hinted at perpetual determination, Thomas seemed like the embodiment of high society's golden sun. He attended Stanford University, turning heads not just for his academic prowess, but also for his philanthropic ventures. By the time he was 30, he had multiplied the family fortune several times over, investing in luxury hotels, condominium complexes, and commercial skyscrapers across the globe. The moment Angela saw Thomas at a charity fundraiser in downtown Los Angeles, her pulse quickened. He was there to announce a new Redwood Developments initiative, affordable housing projects for the underprivileged. The idea felt revolutionary coming from a corporate real estate mogul. It spoke of compassion woven into Thomas's high-powered ambition. Angela admired him instantly, not simply for his wealth, but for what appeared to be a genuine desire to impact lives positively. In turn, Thomas was drawn to Angela's poise, her sincerity, and the undeniable warmth in her eyes. Their romance became the talk of the town. The media dubbed them the Redwood royalty, a fairy tale couple who graced red carpets effortlessly, dazzled in every social circle, and seemed devoted to uplifting the disadvantaged wherever they went. Hand in hand, they were unstoppable, forging a brand that spoke of hope, kindness, and luxury all at once. When they announced their engagement at the Beverly Hills Hotel, the photographs graced every magazine cover, from Vogue to Vanity Fair. Society watchers called them the future of philanthropic celebrity power. Behind the scenes, their relationship deepened over nights spent reading architectural blueprints together, brainstorming for charity events, and imagining the future Redwood dynasty. Angela quickly became integral to Redwood Developments, offering public relations insight and helping Thomas expand his philanthropic footprint. She connected the company to her mother's dance foundation, orchestrated black tie dinners to boost Redwood's philanthropic image, and always did it with an unassuming grace that made people feel seen. Yet, there was more to Thomas Redwood than the polished facade. Little rumors, a snippet of hushed conversation here, an odd text message there, hinted that he was not quite the shining knight in all aspects of his life. But Angela, caught up in the euphoria of love, brushed such rumors aside. It was easier to bask in the glow of their shared success than to question the shadows lurking behind his seemingly perfect mask. It began with a delicate shift in atmosphere, one so subtle that Angela almost missed it altogether. Thomas started coming home later than usual. At first, he blamed endless board meetings or urgent calls with international investors in Dubai or Hong Kong. Angela believed him, or at least wanted to. After all, Redwood Developments was on the brink of launching the Redwood Global Resort chain, a massive undertaking that demanded his attention. The late nights could be easily explained by the sheer scale of his ambitions, but after a few weeks, Angela noticed a new pattern. Thomas would become uncharacteristically guarded with his phone whenever she was around. At dinner, if it buzzed, he'd glance at the screen, slip it face down on the table, and say, "I'll handle it later," with forced nonchalance. Once, Angela caught a glimpse of a name that flashed across his screen: Samantha Blake. She had never heard of a Samantha Blake in Redwood's circle of business associates or philanthropic partners. "Who's Samantha Blake?" Angela asked casually one evening, hoping for a straightforward answer. Thomas shrugged, exhaling a shallow laugh, as if the question was borderline absurd. "Just a consultant I hired to work on our new marketing campaign," he said, not meeting her gaze. "She's pushy, always emailing me at odd hours. Nothing to worry about." Angela nodded, but the uneasy flutter in her stomach persisted. Her father had always told her to trust her instincts, that the gut often senses what the mind refuses to see. She recalled her mother's words too, that in every partnership, honesty must be the bedrock, or the entire edifice of marriage crumbles. Angela tried to push the doubts aside, reminding herself that Thomas was far too busy juggling Redwood's many commitments. She reasoned that her own restlessness, her quickness to suspect, might be the product of stress she had recently taken on the planning of a massive charity gala for underprivileged children. The seeds of suspicion had been planted, though, and they were taking root. Late one night, as Angela scrolled through her social media feeds in bed, Thomas snoozed next to her. She remembered Samantha Blake. Curiosity gnawed at her. Opening a new search tab, she typed in the name. Hundreds of profiles surfaced, but none seemed to match Redwood's marketing consultant. Just as she began to feel foolish, she came across a private Instagram account under the name Samantha B. Visuals. The profile picture was too small to make out clearly, but the woman's silhouette suggested a tall, elegant figure with auburn hair. Something about the cryptic bio, for inquiries, email protected, hinted at a marketing or design professional. Angela resisted the urge to do anything further. She placed her phone aside, determined not to let paranoia become the third wheel in her marriage. She wasn't one to pry, nor was she the jealous type. Yet, as she turned out the light, sleep evaded her. The question circled in her mind: what if there's more to Samantha Blake than Thomas is willing to admit? For a moment, in the darkness, Angela almost reached over to Thomas's phone, thinking she could quickly check his messages. But a wave of guilt washed over her at the thought. She was not an intruder in her own marriage. If something was amiss, Thomas owed her the truth. Instead, she closed her eyes, praying this was all just a misunderstanding, seeds of suspicion that would never grow into something real. The Redwood estate, an expansive property surrounded by tall hedges and patrolled by discreet security personnel, served as the backdrop for many social gatherings. This evening, Angela had arranged a casual cocktail hour for her closest friends, a circle that included Julia Hammond, a publicist with a knack for ferreting out secrets, and Lucas Hernandez, a private investigator often employed by philanthropic organizations to verify how funds were used overseas. Angela's parents were also present, along with a few other long-time friends from her charity work. As the group sipped champagne and enjoyed miniature crab cakes, the conversation inevitably turned to Redwood Developments and its latest projects. Julia, perched on the edge of a velvet sofa, playfully teased Angela, "So, what does the Redwood Empire have up its sleeve next? Another skyscraper in Hong Kong?" Angela laughed, shaking her head. "Thomas is more interested in launching Redwood Global Resort chain right now. We're focusing on sustainable luxury." You should see our new eco-friendly designs, solar panels, water, recycling, the works. Julia raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. Thomas is unstoppable these days. I hear he's been hiring new talent too. Any interesting additions to the Redwood team? Angela nearly spilled her champagne. Julia's question felt like a gentle nudge toward the very suspicion Angela had been nursing in private. She fixed her gaze on the bubbles rising in her glass. Yes, a few, she replied, voice steady. They're working on marketing, nothing too interesting yet. Lucas Hernandez set his glass down with a quiet clink. I've heard Redwood hired Samantha Blake, a bit of a rising star in the digital marketing scene. She's known for her out-of-the-box campaigns. Her father was a big name in advertising, Richard Blake, if I recall correctly. Angela's heart pounded at the mention of Samantha's name. Right, she said simply, forcing a smile. She tried to sound unconcerned, but she noticed Julia and Lucas exchange a subtle glance. Later that evening, once the guests had begun to leave, Julia lingered in the foyer. She tugged Angela gently by the arm and led her away from the others. I didn't want to pry in front of everyone, Julia began, her tone softer now, but I've been hearing rumors. Angela stiffened, carefully placing an empty champagne flute on a marble side table. About? Julia hesitated, then sighed. About Thomas and Samantha Blake. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I'd rather you hear it from me. People are talking whispers of them meeting privately for work sessions late at night. Look, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but you're my friend. I don't want you to be blindsided. Angela felt her cheeks flush with both anger and embarrassment. She forced herself to keep a calm front. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate your concern, but I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Thomas is busy. Samantha's new. That's all it is. Julia regarded her quietly, then gave a supportive nod. I'm here if you need anything. When Angela finally found herself alone, she sank onto a chaise lounge, mind racing. Rumors. That word echoed through her thoughts. If it was just gossip, she could dismiss it. But the unease in her heart told her this was more than idle chatter. She recalled the suspicious phone behavior, the name Samantha Blake glowing on Thomas's screen, and his curt explanation. Suddenly she felt a hollow ache in her chest. Could it be true? A voice inside her insisted she had to know for sure. As the last car pulled out of the driveway and the estate fell silent, Angela stared at the chandeliers overhead, shining like illusions of grandeur, and wondered if they would soon illuminate the cracks in her picture-perfect marriage. A week passed, and Angela could no longer contain the storm of questions swirling in her mind. Thomas's late nights hadn't stopped, if anything. They had increased. Worse, Angela noticed a distinct tension in him whenever she approached him about his schedule. While part of her wanted to believe his press releases about Redwood's expansions, the rumors rattled her more than she cared to admit. Finally, one evening, as they sat for a hurried dinner of take-out sushi Thomas's choice, as usual, Angela summoned her courage. Thomas, she began, voice trembling slightly, I need to ask you something directly. He paused, chopsticks in hand. Sure, what's on your mind? People are talking, Angela said quietly. They're suggesting you're spending a lot of private time with Samantha Blake. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Is there anything going on that I should know about? Thomas's eyes flashed with surprise, perhaps even guilt, before he masked it with annoyance. Rumors, he scoffed. That's all they are. Samantha's an aggressive marketer, so yes, we have a lot of meetings. She's been instrumental in launching Redwood Global's online campaign. This is pure business, Angela. Why on earth would you give these rumors the time of day? Angela's hands felt clammy. She set her chopsticks down. Because your behavior has changed. You come home late, you guard your phone, and you act distant. We hardly spend time together anymore. I need you to be honest with me, Thomas. If you're in some kind of trouble, financial or otherwise, I deserve to know." He let out a slow breath. "I'm sorry if I've made you feel neglected. The Redwood Global launch is more stressful than I anticipated. Samantha's new, yes, but she's just an employee, nothing more, I swear." His tone was conciliatory, and he leaned across the table to take Angela's hand in his. "I love you, Angela. Please trust me." Relief flooded her, albeit momentarily. Thomas's eyes held a certain earnestness that made her want to believe him. A part of her still feared the rumors might be true, but his gentle words and softening posture coaxed her into acceptance. He apologized for the late nights, blaming them on a chaotic schedule, and promised to make more time for her. That weekend, he arranged a surprise getaway to Napa Valley, just the two of them. They stayed at the Auberge du Soleil, indulging in wine tasting sessions and long, leisurely walks through the vineyards. For a brief moment, Angela felt her concerns recede into the background. She remembered why she fell in love with Thomas, his wit, his passion for achieving dreams, and the way he could make her feel like the only woman in the world when he chose to. Upon their return to Los Angeles, Angela resolved to trust Thomas's explanation. Perhaps she had allowed gossip to overshadow reality. Yet, in the quiet corners of her mind, a persistent voice whispered that all might not be well. Sometimes, at night, she'd awake to find his side of the bed empty. She would discover him downstairs, staring at his phone or immersed in hushed phone calls that ended abruptly. The moment she appeared, nevertheless, she held her peace. She wanted to be the supportive wife, the partner who believed in her husband's integrity. Ignoring the flickers of doubt, Angela told herself repeatedly that trust was the bedrock of their relationship. She remembered her wedding vows to stand by Thomas through storms and sunshine alike. With each passing day, she prayed that her choice to believe him was not the prelude to heartbreak. What Angela didn't anticipate was stumbling upon Samantha Blake face to face. The encounter happened almost by accident a few weeks later, during a Redwood Developments cocktail reception for potential hotel investors. Angela had decided to make a surprise appearance, hoping to show support for Thomas. She arrived fashionably late, wearing a sleek black gown that clung elegantly to her figure, her diamond necklace catching the glimmer of the chandeliers overhead. Glancing around the opulent ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel, Angela spotted an auburn-haired woman standing near a small group of international investors. The woman's posture was poised, her laughter light and confident. She wore a form-fitting emerald dress that seemed designed to turn heads. Something about her aura, the effortless way she commanded attention, piqued Angela's curiosity. Angela meandered through the crowd, exchanging polite greetings with board members and wealthy acquaintances. Eventually, she drew close enough to overhear the woman's voice. It was husky yet refined, a tone that suggested she was well accustomed to sophisticated environments. Yes, Redwood Global Resorts will be targeting a younger, trendier demographic as well, the woman said, sipping her martini. We plan to harness social media influencers, create immersive travel experiences, and incorporate cutting-edge digital marketing strategies. An older gentleman in a sharp suit nodded in admiration. Very forward-thinking, Miss Blake, he said. Angela's stomach twisted. Samantha Blake. She took a breath, mustered every bit of composure she had, and stepped forward. Miss Blake, she said, offering a polite smile. I'm Angela Redwood. Samantha's eyes flickered in recognition. She looked momentarily caught off guard, as though she hadn't expected Thomas's wife to appear unannounced. But she recovered quickly, extending a graceful hand. Miss S. Redwood, a pleasure to finally meet you. Thomas speaks very highly of you. Angela felt a tremor run through her at Samantha's mention of Thomas's name. "He's mentioned your work. It's wonderful to see Redwood's marketing in such capable hands." Samantha's lips curved into a practiced smile. "Thank you. It's quite an undertaking, but I enjoy a challenge." Thomas has been very supportive, though the conversation was cordial, an unspoken tension simmered beneath the surface. Angela could almost feel the electricity of suspicion passing between them, like two boxers circling each other in a ring, each waiting for the other to land the first blow. To maintain a polite facade, they chatted briefly about Redwood's expansion plans. Samantha complimented Angela on the Redwood philanthropic endeavors, particularly the dance foundation that bore Angela's mother's legacy. Angela smiled, but her heart raced. This woman knew too much about her life, her marriage, everything. And though Samantha appeared respectful, there was something in her gaze, an unmistakable confidence that hinted at a private victory. Angela eventually excused herself, forcing her voice to stay even. As she walked away, she spied Thomas at the far end of the room, engrossed in conversation with a foreign investor. Their eyes met, and he offered a quick smile, gesturing that he'd come over soon. Angela nodded, but she could feel Samantha's gaze burn into her back. For the rest of the evening, Angela flitted from conversation to conversation, playing the gracious hostess. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying every second of that encounter with Samantha. The woman's presence, her closeness to Thomas, felt like a dagger Angela was trying desperately to ignore. And yet, all she could think was how easily Samantha Blake fit into this world, Angela's world, as though she had a rightful place in it. Despite the tension crackling between them, Angela and Samantha soon found themselves crossing paths more frequently. Redwood developments demanded collaborative efforts, especially with the marketing push for the global resort launch. Angela, known for her philanthropic expertise, had been roped into a new campaign that sought to combine luxury travel with charitable initiatives, an idea that Redwood's board found both innovative and image-boosting. Surprisingly, Samantha seemed eager to involve Angela in brainstorming sessions, often sending polite emails inviting her to pitch ideas. Thomas, busy with the overarching business deals, left the marketing specifics to his talented team. He seemed relieved that Angela and Samantha could work together without friction. Perhaps he even believed his repeated assurances had quelled any jealousy. In truth, Angela attended each meeting with a forced smile, determined not to show the raw, unsettling jealousy roiling within her. One afternoon, Angela found herself seated across from Samantha in a sleek conference room at Redwood's downtown Los Angeles headquarters. The atmosphere was taut with unspoken thoughts. Samantha projected an air of supreme confidence, flipping through slides showcasing social media campaigns, influencer partnerships, and projected ROI. Angela jotted notes but kept her expression neutral. After the meeting ended and the rest of the team filed out, Samantha lingered. "Angela," she said softly, her tone shifting from businesslike to personal. "I'd like to ask you something off the record, if that's okay." Angela tensed. "Yes?" Samantha closed the door, then turned to face her. "I want you to know that I respect you and Thomas. I know how you two built Redwood's philanthropic image. You've given so much of yourselves to this company." She paused, a flicker of what might have been guilt crossing her features. "Thomas has a lot of admiration for you." Angela studied Samantha's face, searching for any hint of genuine remorse or shame. "I appreciate that," she said carefully. "Thomas and I have always supported each other's work. It's how we succeed." A pregnant silence followed. Samantha opened her mouth as if to speak, but then closed it again. She finally offered a tight smile, something like resignation in her eyes. "I look forward to our next strategy session," she said abruptly, turning on her heel and leaving Angela alone. As the office door clicked shut, Angela exhaled shakily. She sensed a battle waged within Samantha, a conflict between a professional veneer and some deeper, more tangled emotion. What was truly happening here? Was Samantha about to confess something? Or was she taunting Angela by flaunting her closeness to Thomas, only to dance away before revealing anything incriminating? In the days that followed, the odd alliance continued. Angela began to wonder if Samantha was playing a dangerous game. There were moments Samantha seemed genuinely appreciative of Angela's input, praising her philanthropic vision to other Redwood executives, boosting Angela's standing in the marketing realm. Yet in private, their conversations bristled with tension. Samantha's gaze, once mild, now carried a certain heat, a challenge maybe, or a plea. Meanwhile, Julia Hammond, Angela's publicist friend, urged caution. Over coffee one morning, Julia flipped through her phone, showing Angela a series of paparazzi shots that suggested Samantha was rising quickly in LA. Social scene, spotted at exclusive clubs, high-end boutiques, and even a glitzy charity gala. In a few of the shots, Samantha was accompanied by men whom tabloids labeled mysterious companions. Thomas was not pictured, but the insinuation was clear. Samantha Blake was no ordinary marketing consultant. She had a personal brand that thrived on attention. Angela wrestled with conflicting emotions. A part of her ached to confront Samantha directly, to demand the truth about her relationship with Thomas. Another part of her, haunted by Thomas's heartfelt apologies and the flicker of guilt. She once thought she'd glimpsed in Samantha, clung to the hope that maybe the rumors were just that rumors. Yet the deeper Angela became entangled in Redwood's marketing campaign, the more she realized how effortlessly Samantha navigated both professional tasks and subtle, intimate conversations with Thomas. At times, she would hear Samantha's laughter echoing through the corridors when Thomas was around. Though Angela tried to stifle her imagination, she couldn't stop picturing them in clandestine corners, locked in a shared secret. Still, no definitive proof surfaced. No text messages, no eyewitness accounts of an affair, nothing but hushed whispers and fleeting interactions. Angela found herself in an agonizing limbo, longing for clarity, yet terrified of the devastation clarity might bring. And so, this dangerous alliance continued, each woman recognizing the other as both collaborator and potential rival. And all the while, the Redwood Empire hummed with progress, oblivious to the storm brewing in the shadows. With the Redwood global resort chain set to launch in a matter of weeks, the entire Redwood Developments team buzzed with anticipation. Thomas wanted to commemorate the milestone with a grand unveiling and opulent party to announce Redwood Global's luxury meets philanthropy vision to the world. Naturally, Angela was in charge of planning every lavish detail. She threw herself into this task with meticulous vigor, partly as a distraction from her anxieties. Angela picked a breathtaking venue, the newly renovated Redwood Plaza, a glistening skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles with a rooftop garden that overlooked the city skyline. Renowned for its panoramic views and state-of-the-art facilities, Redwood Plaza stood as a symbol of Thomas's ambition and success. The event would host SIP investors, Hollywood celebrities, international dignitaries, and top-tier media outlets, all eager to see Redwood's next big move. Despite her reservations about Samantha, Angela couldn't deny the marketing consultant's savvy. Samantha pitched concepts like interactive AR experiences, showcasing Redwood's resort designs, curated Instagram booths to capture the event's glamour, and an exclusive fundraiser that would let guests sponsor impoverished communities in various resort locations. Thomas loved the ideas, praising Samantha's innovative mind. Angela watched from the sidelines, a forced smile etched on her face as Samantha basked in his approval. One afternoon, as Angela supervised the florists installing exotic orchids and carefully arranged lilies around the rooftop garden. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID, Lucas Hernandez, the private investigator. She stepped away from the flurry of workers to answer. "Angela," Lucas said in a low voice. "I've got some information you might want about Samantha Blake." Angela's heart jumped. Her hands tightened around her phone. "Tell me, there's something fishy about her background. She's definitely more than just a marketing consultant. I've dug up records indicating that she used to work as a model for upscale fashion brands. She's also been linked to a couple of wealthy men in Europe, rumors of extramarital affairs, hush money, that sort of thing. Nothing conclusive, but it's not squeaky clean." Angela felt a mix of horror and vindication surge through her. She forced herself to remain calm. "Does Thomas know about any of this?" "I can't confirm, but Redwood's HR records show they did a standard background check. None of this would appear unless they specifically searched for it. Samantha used an alias during some of her earlier career stints, so it's likely Redwood's team never caught on." Lucas paused, then added gently, "Be careful, Angela." She ended the call with her mind spinning. Samantha Blake was no ordinary consultant indeed. If these allegations were true, then Samantha was adept at forging intimate connections with powerful men for personal gain. The notion sent a chill through Angela. She thought back to Thomas's near-obsessive secrecy with his phone, his late-night calls, the undeniable tension every time Samantha was in the room. Yet Angela had no concrete proof of an affair. Rumors and background checks weren't ironclad evidence. Should she confront Thomas? Or should she confront Samantha herself? She weighed her options, then decided neither approach was wise until she had something irrefutable. She resolved to keep Lucas on standby, just in case. In the meantime, she had a monumental event to pull off. The Redwood Global Resorts launch demanded her full attention. For now, Angela would pour her heart into ensuring that the party was a triumph, glittering decorations, gourmet catering, and a star-studded guest list. What Thomas and Samantha didn't know was that Angela had plans of her own. She believed that if there was a truth to be uncovered, the unveiling would happen on her terms. After all, if Samantha was truly after Thomas, how long could they hide under the glow of media spotlights and gossiping socialites? The night of the Redwood Global Resorts launch was a spectacle of wealth, glamour, and aspiration. Dressed in a couture silk gown of deep sapphire, Angela glided through the rooftop garden, greeting governors, film producers, tech moguls, anyone with enough clout to garner Redwood's attention. The air thrummed with possibility. Even the city lights seemed brighter, as though LAITSELF was celebrating Thomas Redwood's crowning achievement. Samantha Blake arrived early, wearing a shimmering gold dress that hugged her figure. Cameras flashed around her as she confidently strolled in, meeting with Redwood executives to finalize last-minute marketing details. Thomas appeared by her side briefly, offering a faint smile that the paparazzi caught on camera. From across the garden, Angela watched, her heart pounding. Rumors might be invisible, but the tension in that moment felt like a glaring neon sign. As the event commenced, Thomas took center stage on a specially erected platform. He delivered a polished speech about Redwood Global's mission to fuse luxury with social responsibility. His voice reverberated across the hushed crowd, detailing philanthropic tie-ins, eco-friendly infrastructure, and the brand's vision for sustainable tourism. The applause was thunderous, echoing across the rooftop, drowning out the murmurs of gossip. Cameras panned to Angela, who stood near the front, smiling graciously at her husband's success. Then came the moment that Angela had orchestrated with chilling precision. After Thomas concluded, Angela stepped forward to thank the guests. But before she delivered her carefully written remarks about Redwood's philanthropic expansions, she paused. With a deft press of a button on her phone, The LED screen behind her flickered to life. At first it displayed Redwood's official promotional video. Then, abruptly, the feed switched. The crowd hushed in confusion as a grainy, handheld video replaced the polished corporate montage. Angela's heart hammered in her chest. She questioned her resolve for the briefest second, but she pressed on. On screen, Thomas Redwood and Samantha Blake appeared, their faces bathed in the intimate glow of a hotel lamp. It was unmistakably them locked in a passionate embrace. A gasp erupted from the audience. Cameras whirred, capturing every reaction. Some guests covered their mouths in shock, others scrambled to look away. Julia Hammond, standing to one side, watched in stunned horror. Angela could practically feel the surge of adrenaline across the rooftop, as if an electric shock had just jolted the crowd. She stood stone-faced, every muscle tense, her eyes never leaving Thomas. Thomas's expression was a storm of disbelief and fury. He lunged toward the AV technician, shouting, "Cut it off! Shut it down!" But the entire system was under Angela's command, her phone linked to the feed. She let the video play just long enough for there to be no doubt about what was happening. Then, with a final tap, she ended the display. The screen went black, plunging the rooftop into an awkward silence. The only sounds were the city traffic below and the collective, stunned breathing of the high society crowd. Calmly, Angela spoke into the microphone, her voice trembling but resolute. "I apologize for that unexpected interruption," she said, "but I felt the need to share a truth before we move forward with Redwood Global's noble ambitions. Honesty, after all, begins at home." She turned to Thomas, whose face was pale with anger and shame. "I will not stand by while you flaunt your deceit behind closed doors." In that moment, time seemed to slow. Phones were already snapping photos and recording videos, capturing Angela's shocking announcement and Thomas's humiliated fury. Samantha Blake stood frozen, her cheeks burning with humiliation, as whispers of condemnation and scandal rippled through the gathering. The Redwood Global Resorts launch a testament to Thomas Redwood's unstoppable success, had turned into the spectacle of a marital betrayal, laid bare for everyone to see. Pandemonium erupted the instant Angela stepped off the platform. Journalists who had been invited to cover the glamorous launch now clamored for sound bites of a far more salacious story. Microphones were thrust into Angela's face. Camera flashes blinded her at every turn. Thomas, surrounded by frantic PR staff, barked orders to shut the party down. Security personnel scrambled to maintain some semblance of control, but the truth had already outpaced their efforts. Within minutes, the footage had been recorded and shared across social media tweets, Instagram reels, TikTok clips, all capturing the explosive moment when Angela exposed Thomas's affair. Samantha Blake tried to slip away through the back, but she found herself cornered by a small horde of paparazzi. Her once cool composure shattered. Her voice quivered as she insisted there was a misunderstanding, that the video had been doctored. Few believed her. The explicit intimacy on screen left little room for such claims. Thomas reached Angela, his voice low and icy. "How dare you?" he seethed, his eyes sharp with betrayal. "You've ruined everything. Our investors, the media, Redwood's reputation is in jeopardy." Angela stared back, refusing to be intimidated. "You've ruined this marriage," she spat, tears threatening to surface despite her steely resolve. "I merely gave everyone a glimpse of your truth." Thomas's anger flared, then faltered. For a brief second, guilt flickered in his eyes. Security guards closed in, ushering both of them away from the prying cameras. The Redwood executives, many of whom had been longtime loyalists to Thomas, watched in disbelief, their carefully manicured brand image unraveling before their eyes. Meanwhile, the crowd dispersed in a flurry of hushed conversations and outraged murmurs. Governors, celebrities, and business moguls alike slipped out of the venue, all with the same frantic question: how would the Redwood Empire recover from this scandal? Samantha eventually managed to flee, leaving in a sleek black town car that sped into the night. Outside Redwood Plaza, protesters who had come to challenge Redwood's environmental impact found themselves overshadowed by throngs of reporters, each seeking a new angle on the domestic catastrophe. Cheating, betrayal, public humiliation. The headlines wrote themselves. Angela retreated to a small VIP lounge, heart racing, tears now streaming down her cheeks. Julia Hammond found her there, wordlessly wrapping her in a supportive hug. "You did what you had to," Julia whispered. "But this is going to be messy, Angela. The press won't stop calling. Investors might pull out. Are you ready for that fallout?" Angela brushed tears away, her voice hollow but unwavering. "I am. If Redwood collapses, so be it. It's Thomas's making, not mine." Minutes later, Thomas stormed into the lounge, ignoring Julia's glare. He slammed the door behind him. "We need damage control," he said coldly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "God, Angela, hi. Don't you dare try to shift this blame onto me," Angela cut in, her eyes fierce. "You've been lying for months. You made your choices. Now you can live with the consequences." Thomas's shoulders slumped, the reality of his situation bearing down on him. He knew that Redwood's board would demand immediate answers. He also knew that Angela had outmaneuvered him in front of everyone. His once pristine image as a philanthropic real estate titan had been shattered. With Julia's watchful gaze upon them, he attempted to reach out. "Angela, can we speak privately? Just please." "Let me explain." Angela held his gaze, her anger tempered by a weary sorrow. After a long pause, she nodded. "Fine, but don't expect forgiveness. Not tonight." Thomas gave a quick nod, then beckoned for a Redwood PR manager waiting in the hall. Damage control had become the top priority. But as they followed the manager to a secluded office, Angela couldn't help but wonder if there was any saving their marriage, let alone the Redwood brand. The video, now viral, had unleashed a storm that neither Redwood's wealth nor Thomas's influence could contain. And the worst of it was only beginning. By the next morning, the Redwood Plaza fiasco dominated every major news outlet. Headlines screamed about the scandalous Redwood launch and the high society betrayal. Talk shows speculated on how Angela managed to obtain the incriminating footage. Tabloid columnists dissected Samantha Blake's background with merciless glee. Corporate analysts wondered if Redwood Developments would survive the looming PR disaster. In a twist of irony, Redwood Global Resorts briefly trended on social media not for its groundbreaking sustainable luxury, but for the unfiltered drama that overshadowed its unveiling. While some social media users sympathized with Angela's brave stand, others criticized her for destroying a monumental business event in such a public manner. Regardless of which side people took, everyone agreed on one thing: the Redwood name would never be the same. At Redwood Developments, an emergency board meeting convened at dawn. Thomas, looking harried and deflated, presented a damage control plan. He insisted the affair was a private matter that should not impact Redwood's business dealings. But the board members, most of whom had built Redwood's success alongside Thomas or his late father, were furious. Major investors threatened to withdraw funding unless Thomas stepped down from his day-to-day role. They feared ongoing negative press and public boycotts. Redwood's stock prices plummeted, losing millions in market value overnight. Angela, meanwhile, found herself torn between heartbreak and a strange sense of relief. She had taken a nuclear approach to exposing Thomas's betrayal, and now the consequences were brutally visible. She retreated to the privacy of her parents' estate, a more modest mansion in a quiet, gated community. There, She tried to evade the relentless media scrutiny. Her mother, Lena, insisted she had done the right thing, that no woman should tolerate infidelity. Her father, Dr. Beaumont, offered steady support, taking calls from attorneys on Angela's behalf and screening her from intrusive reporters camped outside the gates. During one afternoon, Angela scrolled through the countless messages flooding her phone. Some came from friends offering emotional support. Others were from tabloids, begging for an exclusive interview. Her social media was awash with comments, some praising her courage, others condemning her tactics. A call from Thomas's attorney arrived, formally requesting a meeting. Angela felt her stomach twist. This was the beginning of what she knew could be a very public, very acrimonious divorce. She mulled over the idea of responding, but bitterness and sorrow warred within her. She wasn't ready to face the legal ramifications, not yet. She needed time to grieve what she had lost. The marriage she once believed was unbreakable, the love she thought was genuine. Meanwhile, Samantha Blake's name surged in the press for all the wrong reasons. Photographs of her tear-streaked face fleeing Redwood Plaza circulated everywhere. Rumors flew that she had been fired, her contract terminated immediately after the scandal. Some believed she might file a lawsuit against Redwood for wrongful termination or defamation, while others speculated she had gone into hiding. Julia Hammond visited Angela one evening, bringing a stack of newspapers and a bottle of vintage Merlot. They settled in the living room, the heavy drapes drawn against the paparazzi's watchful eyes. Word on the street is Redwood's board might demand Thomas's resignation, Julia said gently, pouring 2 glasses of wine. Are you okay with that? Angela sighed, pressing her fingertips to her temples. I'm not sure how I feel, she admitted. On one hand, Redwood is his life's work and part of mine too. But he's the one who jeopardized everything. I did warn him, in my own way, that deceit wouldn't be tolerated. She took a slow sip of wine, letting the bitterness settle on her tongue. I can't pretend I feel sorry for him, Julia. I'm just sad. Julia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. It's a lot to process. You exposed his affair on a global stage. That's not something anyone just walks away from. But maybe this needed to happen. You deserve truth, Angela. And Redwood deserves a leader with integrity. The days that followed were a haze of press statements, shaken investors, and legal negotiations. Thomas tried to salvage Redwood's brand, issuing apologies to stakeholders and releasing carefully worded statements about his personal failings. But his contrition, displayed on a public stage, rang hollow to Angela. In the glare of cameras, she recognized the same man who had once charmed her, calculated, polished, and always in control. Now, however, the mask had slipped. He was a broken idol, desperate to cling to what remained of his kingdom. 3 weeks passed, during which Redwood developments teetered on a knife's edge. Major investors insisted that Thomas step down indefinitely. The Redwood board prepared a hasty announcement naming an interim CEO, Victor Chen, a long-time Redwood executive with a reputation for integrity. Despite the chaos, Redwood managed to retain some of its major contracts, largely due to the efforts of loyal employees who believed in the company's philanthropic vision. Yet the brand's image was tarnished beyond quick repair. Angela maintained her distance, focusing on healing. She started therapy sessions to cope with the emotional toll. She also engaged in quiet philanthropic work through her mother's dance foundation, finding solace in teaching underprivileged kids. The rhythmic beauty of dance reminded her that even pain could transform into art, given time. But the confrontation she had avoided was inevitable. Late one afternoon, Thomas showed up unannounced at her parents' estate. He slipped past the press outside, aided by the discreet back entrance Lena Beaumont still allowed him to use. Angela found him in the drawing room, staring at old family portraits. There was a weariness in his eyes she had never witnessed before. "Angela," he said quietly, turning to face her, "I know I don't deserve your time, but I needed to see you." She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You have 5 minutes." He swallowed hard, shoulders sagging. "I resigned from Redwood today. The board made it clear I have no future there, not while this scandal rages. Victor Chen is taking over." Angela nodded. A small part of her ached at the finality of it, but she kept her expression firm. "It's what the company needs." Thomas stepped closer, hands trembling. "I want to apologize. I know you might not believe me, but I never meant to hurt you. Samantha was. It was a mistake, a terrible lapse in judgment. We started working together, and he paused, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I don't have a good excuse." His words fell into the silence. Angela searched his face, remembering the man she married, a visionary, yes, but also a caring partner once upon a time. "You humiliated me," she said, her voice trembling. "You betrayed our vows, and you did it so brazenly. Why? Did you think I'd never find out?" Thomas shook his head slowly. "I don't know what I was thinking. I got caught up in the pressure, the ambition, the adoration that came from everyone around me. Samantha was new, exciting. It was an escape, Angela. I was weak." A tear slipped down Angela's cheek, though her voice hardened. "You destroyed your own empire, Thomas. And worse, you destroyed the trust I had in you. I don't see a way back from that." Thomas closed his eyes, as if bracing for the final blow. "I understand. I won't ask you to forgive me or to stay. I just wanted you to hear me say, I'm sorry." Angela studied him for a moment, then walked past him toward the large bay window. Outside, the sun was setting over the manicured lawns, casting a golden glow. "I'll let the lawyers handle the divorce," she said quietly, not turning around. "As for Redwood, I'll stay on the philanthropic boards. But beyond that, I want no part in your life." Thomas exhaled, nodding, though tears welled in his eyes. He lingered a moment, as though hoping for some small final grace. But Angela remained silent, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Realizing there was nothing more to say, Thomas left, the echo of his footsteps trailing through the silent halls. As the door closed behind him, Angela sank into a chair, her body shaking with sobs she had held back for weeks. Outside, the paparazzi might still be waiting, hungry for more drama. But inside, she felt strangely relieved. The showdown, as painful as it was, had at least given her closure. Life after the scandal proved a bittersweet tapestry of heartbreak and possibility for Angela. Legally, she and Thomas separated, initiating a divorce process that would untangle their shared assets and philanthropic endeavors. With the Redwood brand's identity in flux, she retained a seat on a new philanthropic council chaired by Victor Chen, who recognized Angela's genuine passion for charity. Redwood Development slowly began to rebuild its image under fresh leadership, focusing on transparency and ethical business practices. Samantha Blake vanished from the Los Angeles social scene, rumored to have moved to Europe. Some reports claimed she was living under a different name, while others suggested she might try to reinvent herself in another high-profile circle. For Angela, Samantha's fate mattered little now. The Mistress was a ghost from a painful past she intended to leave behind. Reclaiming her independence proved challenging. Angela discovered she no longer needed to consult Thomas on every decision, from philanthropic allocations to personal finances. She took time to travel abroad on her own, visiting Redwood's resort properties in Asia and Africa, ensuring the philanthropic tie-ins were carried out ethically. Witnessing children in impoverished regions receive education, housing, and healthcare funded by Redwood's initiatives renewed Angela's sense of purpose. Despite the betrayal she had endured, the philanthropic missions she once championed with Thomas still resonated deeply within her. Her parents stood by her as unwavering pillars of support. Dr. Beaumont, who had witnessed his daughter's heartbreak, encouraged her to find solace in volunteering at free clinics. Lena Beaumont opened her dance foundation to more community outreach programs, giving Angela a creative outlet to help teach dance therapy to trauma survivors, an endeavor that also assisted her own healing process. The joy in children's eyes reminded her that resilience is born from adversity. Julia Hammond, ever the loyal friend, coaxed Angela back into select social events, urging her not to let scandal define her. Although paparazzi occasionally snapped photos of her, tabloids eventually moved on to fresher gossip. People in social circles whispered, but many admired Angela for her courage. She had stood up for herself in a world where appearances were everything. In quiet moments, Angela reflected on the marriage she'd once cherished. She remembered the early days of love, the philanthropic galas, and the shared dream of building Redwood into a force for good. That vision, she realized, was never just Thomas's. It was hers too. If Redwood still had a chance to become a beacon of ethical luxury, perhaps her contribution would be the moral compass it sorely needed. Gradually, she learned to embrace the future. The Redwood scandal, while devastating, had revealed a strength she never knew she possessed, a resolve to confront deceit head-on, even at the cost of public spectacle. Stepping out from Thomas's shadow, Angela came to see that her worth was not measured by a marriage certificate or her husband's empire. Her path forward was hers to shape. On a warm spring morning in Los Angeles, Angela stood at the Redwood Children's Center, watching a group of kids run through a dance routine she had choreographed. Their laughter filled the air, echoing off brightly painted walls. In their hopeful smiles, Angela recognized her own rebirth. She had survived betrayal and emerged stronger, choosing to pour her energy into creating goodness where once there was only heartbreak. With the hush of a brand new day stretching before her, Angela closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The past, seared with scandal, was behind her. Ahead lay the promise of new beginnings, guided by hard-earned wisdom and an unbreakable will to persevere. Though the Redwood name might carry the weight of shame in some corners, Angela Redwood, standing tall in her own right, would continue moving forward, forging her own legacy of truth, resilience, and unwavering hope. And so, in the wake of a grand betrayal, Angela Redwood redefined her life's purpose, emerging not just as a survivor, but a leader with her own voice. The scandal that once threatened to destroy her ultimately became the catalyst for an unshakable resolve. She chose healing over resentment, growth over bitterness, and in doing so, paved a path for new beginnings. But this story is far from over. Will the Redwood Empire fully recover? Can Thomas ever atone for his mistakes? Will Samantha resurface, reinvented for yet another twist? We invite you to continue this journey with us, sharing your thoughts on love, loyalty, and second chances.
What happens when a lie is more powerful than a heartbeat? For Isabel Sterling, her husband's name was a shield, a promise of a perfect life carved in gold and whispered in the most exclusive circles of London. She had the mansion, the glamour, and the one thing she'd always dreamed of: a child growing within her, a true heir to the Sterling fortune. But in the shadows of their perfect world, a venomous whisper was taking root. A mistress, a lie about a phantom pregnancy, and a husband blinded by betrayal. This isn't a story about a simple affair. It's the story of how a millionaire, in a single devastating act, chose to believe a calculated deception, and through his genuinely pregnant wife, out into the cold, unforgiving night. Prepare yourselves, because the truth is always more shocking than the lie. The Sterling residence, a palatial white stucco mansion overlooking Regent's Park, was less a home and more a monument to Damien Sterling's success. Its gardens were meticulously sculpted. Its windows gleamed like polished diamonds, and inside the air itself seemed to hum with the quiet, confident thrum of immense wealth. Damien, at 34, was the architect of this empire. The CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech conglomerate that had disrupted global logistics. He was sharp, decisive, and possessed a charisma that could command a boardroom or charm a princess with equal ease. His wife Isabel was the mansion's soul. She was not the product of a corporate merger or a social climbing family. She was a former art historian whose quiet intelligence and gentle grace had captivated Damien 5 years prior. She moved through the cavernous rooms not as a conqueror, but as a caretaker, replacing the coldness of marble with the warmth of fresh flowers and the echo of a kind word to the staff. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, power and grace, ambition and heart. For weeks, Isabel had been holding a secret, a precious, fragile thing she kept wrapped in silent joy. She was pregnant. After 2 years of quiet hope and hushed disappointments, the confirmation from her doctor felt like the sun breaking through a perpetual fog. She planned to tell Damien on their anniversary, to present him with a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties she'd hidden in her wardrobe, a tangible promise of the future he claimed he wanted. The first tremor in her perfect world was subtle, a name spoken with a little too much frequency. Chloe Vance. Chloe closed the Hong Kong deal, Damien would announce over dinner, his eyes fixed on his phone. She's a killer, absolutely ruthless. Chloe reorganized the PR division. The board is thrilled, he'd mention as they dressed for a gala. She thinks 3 steps ahead of everyone. Isabel pictured this Chloe as a sharp-shouldered, severe woman in a power suit. She felt a prickle of professional admiration for her, a woman succeeding in her husband's cutthroat world. She never imagined her as a threat, because in Isabel's world, love and loyalty were the bedrock upon which everything else was built. The first time she met Chloe was at a company charity gala held at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Isabel, radiant in a deep sapphire gown that subtly disguised the very beginnings of her new secret, was standing by Damien's side. He was mid-flow describing a new AI venture to a cluster of investors when a woman glided up to them. She wasn't severe at all. Chloe Vance was stunning with a mane of fiery red hair, eyes the color of jade, and a smile that was both dazzling and predatory. She wore a backless emerald dress that seemed poured onto her statuesque frame. "Isabel, darling," Damien said, turning with a brilliant smile. "This is the miracle worker I've been telling you about. Chloe Vance. Chloe, my wife, Isabel." Chloe's eyes swept over Isabel in a fraction of a second, a flicker of assessment that was so quick, Isabel almost missed it. But she didn't. It was the way a predator sizes up its prey. "It is an absolute honor to finally meet you." Chloe purred, her voice a low, husky melody. She extended a hand, her long crimson nails brushing against Isabel's skin. "Damien speaks so highly of you. He says you're his anchor." The word anchor sounded less like a compliment and more like a weight. Isabel smiled graciously, a lifetime of decorum kicking in. "It's lovely to meet you too, Chloe. Damien is very proud of the work you're doing." Throughout the evening, Isabel watched her. Chloe was a master of her craft. She orbited Damien, never too close, never too far. She'd lean in to whisper a comment, her hand briefly touching his arm. She would laugh at his jokes with a fervor that felt just a little too practiced. To everyone else, she was the perfect deferential employee. To Isabel, a cold knot of dread began to tighten in her stomach. It was a feeling she couldn't name, an intuition she couldn't prove. Later that week, the dread was given a name. Damien came home late, smelling of expensive whiskey and a faint, unfamiliar perfume, a heady scent of jasmine and spice. He was tired, he said, a brutal day of negotiations. As he took off his jacket, something small and silver fell from his pocket, clattering onto the marble floor of their dressing room. Isabel bent down to pick it up. It was a single earring, a delicate modern design of a silver serpent. She'd seen its twin dangling from Chloe Vance's ear at the gala. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She held it up. "Damien, what is this?" He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. "Oh, that must be Chloe's. We were all working late in the conference room. She must have dropped it. I'll have my assistant return it tomorrow." His explanation was smooth, plausible, but the ease with which he said it, the lack of surprise, sent a shard of ice through Isabel's veins. He didn't meet her eyes. He just walked into the shower, leaving her standing there, the silver serpent feeling like a brand in her palm, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warm, living secret she held in her womb. The lie had been born, and Isabel, standing in her gilded cage, was about to find out how easily its golden bars could be bent into a weapon. The discovery of the earring shifted the atmosphere in the Sterling mansion from one of quiet luxury to one of tense, unspoken suspicion. Isabel tried to dismiss it, to tell herself she was being paranoid, hormonal even. But the seed of doubt, once planted, began to sprout insidious roots. Chloe's name was no longer just a mention of professional success. It became a constant, invasive presence. Damien's phone, once left casually on the nightstand, was now perpetually screen down. He had emergency late-night calls that required him to step out onto the balcony, his voice a low, urgent murmur carried away by the London wind. Business trips to Zurich and Singapore were added to his calendar at the last minute, trips Chloe was also coincidentally required to attend. Chloe, for her part, began a campaign of subtle, psychological warfare. One afternoon, a bouquet of exotic blood-red orchids arrived at the house. The card, in a flamboyant script, read, "To the Sterling home, a little something to brighten the place up. We all work so hard to keep it running. CV." It was a power play disguised as a gift, a declaration that she too was a pillar of Damien's world. Isabel quietly told the housekeeper to put them in a distant guest room. The gaslighting was masterful. When Isabel, her voice trembling slightly, asked Damien why he was so distant, he would look at her with feigned concern. "Distant, darling. I'm closing the biggest merger of my career. I'm under immense pressure. I need your support, not accusations." When she mentioned the constant texts he received at all hours, he sighed with exasperation. "It's a global business, Isabel. It's 9 a.m. in Tokyo. Do you want me to just switch off? Chloe is managing the Asian markets for me. She has to keep me updated." He made her feel needy, paranoid, and worst of all, ungrateful. He was building an empire for them, he insisted. Why couldn't she see that meanwhile, Isabel's pregnancy was progressing? Morning sickness became a daily reality, a wave of nausea that she had to hide, attributing it to a migraine or a bad oyster. She hadn't yet told Damien. The perfect, joyful moment she had envisioned was gone, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. How could she bring a child into a home where its own mother felt like an intruder? The breaking point came during a weekend they were meant to spend at their country estate in the Cotswolds. It was their anniversary. Isabel had packed the tiny booties, determined to reclaim their relationship, to remind him of the life they had promised to build together. On Friday afternoon, as she was about to call their driver, Damien walked into the library, his face a mask of regret. "Darling, I'm so sorry." He began, the words already sounding hollow. "Something's come up. A massive server breach at the Frankfurt office. It's all hands on deck. I have to fly out tonight." Isabel's heart sank. "Tonight, Damien? It's our anniversary weekend." "I know, and I feel terrible. Believe me, I'd rather be with you." He walked over and kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt more like a formality than an act of affection. "Chloe is already at the airport, sorting out the logistics with the German team. I have to go." The casual mention of her name was like a slap. "Of course, Chloe is there." Damien's eyes hardened. "What is that supposed to mean?" "She's my senior VP. Her job is to handle crises. Are we really going to do this again, Isabel?" "Right now." Defeated. She just shook her head. "No, go. Save your company." He left. The house fell silent, vast and empty. That evening, Isabel sat alone in their cavernous dining room, the chef's celebratory meal untouched. She scrolled through her phone, a masochistic impulse guiding her fingers to a popular high society Instagram blog. And there it was, a spotted post. A grainy photo taken within the last hour from inside the exclusive private terminal at Heathrow. It showed two figures boarding a private jet. Damien, his arm casually draped around the shoulders of a woman with unmistakable fiery red hair. They were laughing. The caption read, "Tech mogul Damien Sterling and a mystery redhead off for a romantic getaway. Looks like business is booming." The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the table. There was no server breach in Frankfurt. The only thing in crisis was her marriage, the Cotswolds, their anniversary, their future. It was all a lie to facilitate a weekend away with his mistress. A wave of nausea more violent than any morning sickness washed over her. But this time it was followed by a walled-hard clarity. The intuition she'd tried to suppress, the whispers she'd tried to ignore. It was all real. She was not paranoid. She was being played for a fool. She walked upstairs, her steps heavy, with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. She opened her wardrobe and took out the small, beautifully wrapped box. She untied the silk ribbon and lifted the lid. The tiny cream-colored booties lay nestled in tissue paper, a symbol of a future that now felt like a cruel joke. Tears finally streamed down her face, hot and silent. She was alone in a house that no longer felt like a home, pregnant with the child of a man who was at that very moment in the arms of another woman. The serpent's whisper had become a roar, and it had devoured her world whole. Damien returned from his crisis in Frankfurt, looking refreshed and triumphant. He presented Isabel with an expensive diamond bracelet from a boutique in Geneva, a guilt offering she accepted with a quiet, hollow thank you. She said nothing of the photo. Confronting him felt futile. She was gathering her thoughts, trying to figure out what to do, not just for herself, but for the tiny life she was carrying. She needed a plan, not a screaming match. Her silence, however, was misinterpreted by Damien as acquiescence. To him, the storm had passed. For Chloe, it was the perfect opportunity to launch her final devastating assault. The attack came on a Tuesday evening. Damien was home, a rarity. They were having a tense, mostly silent dinner when his phone buzzed. It was a text. He glanced at it, and the color drained from his face. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "I have to go out," he said, his voice strained. "Another crisis?" Isabel asked, her tone flat. "Yes. Something personal. I'll be back later." He was gone before she could say another word. He didn't come home until 3 a.m. He looked shattered. His suit rumpled, his face etched with a mixture of horror and something else. A grim, conflicted responsibility. He found Isabel waiting up for him in their bedroom, a book lying unread in her lap. He didn't apologize for the hour. He just stood at the foot of the bed and said the words that would detonate their lives. "It's Chloe," he said, his voice raspy. "Isabel. She's pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. Isabel stared at him, sure she had misheard. "What? She's pregnant?" he repeated, running a hand through his hair distractedly. "She told me tonight. She's about 8 weeks along. She's terrified. She didn't want to tell me. She didn't want to ruin this." He gestured vaguely at the opulent room at their life. Isabel felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her chest, but it came out as a strangled gasp. "She's pregnant. After your business trip to Frankfurt." It happened before that. He snapped, his guilt manifesting as anger. "It was a mistake. A couple of times after we worked late. It was meaningless, Isabel, I swear. It just happened. A meaningless mistake now has a heartbeat, apparently." She shot back, the sarcasm dripping with pain. Damien flinched. He started pacing, the frantic energy of a trapped animal. She was going to handle it on her own. She never wanted to be a problem. But she had a scare tonight, some cramping. She went to the hospital. Everything is okay, but the doctor, it made it all real for her. She broke down. She felt she had to tell me. Every word was a carefully rehearsed line fed to him by a master manipulator. Chloe had laid the perfect trap. The scare, the reluctance, the breakdown. It was all designed to make him feel like her protector, to paint her as a tragic, vulnerable victim. And then Chloe delivered her masterpiece of deception. The next day, Damien sat Isabel down in their sunroom, a place where they used to read the Sunday papers together. He looked like a judge about to deliver a death sentence. "Chloe wanted you to see this," he said, sliding a photograph across the glass table. "She wants to be transparent." Isabel picked it up. It was a sonogram, a grainy black and white image of a tiny bean-shaped fetus. The top corner of the printout had a name, C. Vance, and a date from the previous evening. Isabel stared at it. Her own first sonogram picture was tucked away in her bedside table drawer. It looked so similar. It was the universal image of early life. But this one felt like a forgery, a desecration. It was a lie printed on thermal paper. Chloe had likely downloaded a stock image from the internet and paid a graphic designer a paltry sum to Photoshop her name onto it. It was a simple, brutally effective deception. "She feels terrible about this, Damien said, using her old pet name, a desperate attempt to soften the blow. "She knows she's destroyed everything. She even suggested she could go away, have the baby somewhere else, and I could support them from a distance." The calculated magnanimity of the offer was Chloe's checkmate. It made her seem noble, self-sacrificing. It was designed to make Damien say what he said next. "But I can't do that," he said, his jaw tight. "I can't let my child grow up without a father. I caused this. I have to take responsibility." Isabel looked from the fake sonogram to her husband's tormented face. He was completely ensnared. Chloe hadn't just seduced him. She had colonized his conscience. He saw himself as a man of honor, forced to do the right thing in a terrible situation. He didn't see the puppeteer pulling his strings. She felt a sudden, profound calm. The shock had given way to a chilling resolve. The game was no longer about saving her marriage. It was about survival. "And what does taking responsibility look like, Damien?" she asked, her voice steady, devoid of the tears he expected. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw the cold, hard calculation in his eyes. The CEO was back. He was managing a crisis, and she was now a liability. "I don't know yet," he said, "but things are going to have to change." Isabel knew exactly what that meant. The phantom pregnancy had done its work. It had created a phantom heir, and in the Sterling Empire there was only room for one. The days that followed were a cold war fought in the silent, opulent corridors of the mansion. Damien treated Isabel with a detached, clinical politeness that was more chilling than any argument. He was an executive managing a hostile takeover of his own life, and she was the asset being liquidated. He had lawyers on the phone at all hours, their hushed conversations about settlements and non-disclosure agreements drifting from his study. Chloe, meanwhile, was nowhere and everywhere. She didn't come to the house, but her presence was a toxic miasma. There were florist deliveries of funereal white lilies, Chloe's favorite, and calls that Damien would take with a pained, "I'm with Isabel right now. I'll call you back," a performance of sensitivity that was purely for his own benefit. Isabel knew her time was running out. The lie was solidifying, hardening into an accepted truth in Damien's mind. Her own truth, her own secret, felt fragile and powerless against it. She had to tell him. It was her last desperate card to play. She chose a Thursday night. A storm was brewing over London, the sky a bruised purple. The dramatic fallacy was not lost on her. She found Damien in his study, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring out at the city lights. "Damien, we need to talk," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Not with lawyers, not about settlements. About us." He turned his face weary. "Isabel, there's nothing left to say. My lawyers will be in touch with yours. I will be generous. You will be comfortable for the rest of your life." "I don't want your money," she said, stepping closer. "I want my husband, the man I married. The man who would never believe a lie like this." "A lie?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "I've seen the sonogram, Isabel. I was with her at the hospital. This is real." "The hospital you took her to after she called you with her scare," Isabel countered. "Did you sit in the examination room with her? Did you speak to the doctor yourself? Or did you wait in the hallway while she crafted her story?" He faltered for a second, a flicker of doubt in his eyes before it was extinguished by his own guilt. "Stop it. You're just trying to twist this." "No," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm trying to tell you the truth. Chloe is not the only one with news, Damien." This was it. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant, Damien." The words hung in the air between them. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder. Damien stared at her, his expression slowly shifting from weary frustration to cold, disbelieving fury. "What did you just say?" he whispered. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her voice gaining strength. "I'm 12 weeks along. I was going to tell you on our anniversary before all this. I have the doctor's report. I have my own sonogram. She saw the flicker of hope in his eyes, a desperate desire to believe her. But Chloe's poison had seeped too deep. The lie was a fortress, and her truth was a pebble thrown against its walls. He shook his head slowly, a cruel, pitying smile twisting his lips. Wow. I have to hand it to you, Isabel. That's quite a move. Desperate, but clever. The condescension in his voice stole her breath. Move. You think this is a move? This is our child, Damien. Our child, he roared, his control finally snapping. He slammed his glass down on the desk, whiskey sloshing over the polished wood. Don't you dare use that to try and trap me. Chloe gets pregnant by accident, and you suddenly, miraculously, are pregnant too. What a coincidence. Did you run out and fake a sonogram this afternoon after my lawyer called? The accusation was so vile, so far beyond the pale, that Isabel felt a wave of dizziness. He was comparing her to Chloe, accusing her of the very deception she was a victim of. How dare you? She whispered, tears of rage and heartbreak finally spilling down her cheeks. I have loved you. I have stood by you. And you stand there and accuse me of something so monstrous. I'm accusing you of being a liar, he shouted, his face contorted. Chloe, for all her faults, was honest with me. She was terrified, but she told the truth. You're trying to fight her, lie with a bigger lie, and I won't have it. The thunder cracked directly overhead, and the heavens opened. Rain began to lash against the window panes, a torrent of nature's fury mirroring the destruction inside. I want you out, Damien said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal command. I want you out of this house. Tonight. What? Isabel gasped, stumbling back. Damien. No, it's pouring with rain. Where would I go? I don't care, he said, his eyes as cold and hard as granite. He turned his back on her, staring out at the storm. Go to a hotel. Go to your parents. Go to hell for all I care. Just get out of my sight. My security team will escort you. Pack a bag. You have 30 minutes. He didn't look at her again. The finality in his voice was absolute. There was no appeal, no reprieve. The man who had vowed to love and protect her was casting her out into a storm, believing she was a liar and a fraud. Numbly, Isabel walked out of the study and up the grand staircase. Two stoic men in dark suits, members of Damien's personal security detail, were already waiting in the hallway. They watched her with impassive eyes as she walked into her bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. She packed mechanically a few clothes, her toiletries the file from her obstetrician, containing the proof of her pregnancy, and the small box with the baby booties. She was weeping, but her sobs were silent, her body shaking with a grief too profound for sound. 30 minutes later, she was standing at the grand entrance of her home. One of the security guards held an umbrella over her. The other had placed her single suitcase on the rain-slicked driveway. Damien was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't even afforded her the decency of a final glance. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing with terrifying finality. She was Isabel Sterling no more. She was just a woman alone in the rain with a broken heart and a secret child that her own husband refused to believe was real. As she stood there shivering in the deluge, she made a vow. She would not break. She would survive this. And she would bring her child into the world, a world far away from the poisonous lies of the House of Sterling. The taxi's headlights cut through the relentless curtain of rain, the wipers fighting a losing battle. Isabel gave the driver the only address that came to mind, a small flat in Camden. It was a world away from Regent's Park, a world of brick facades, bustling markets, and the comforting anonymity of ordinary life. It was the home of Maria Flores, her closest friend. Maria, a fiery and fiercely loyal journalist, whom Isabel had known since university, opened the door in her pajamas, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of her drenched, heartbroken friend standing on her doorstep with a single suitcase. "Izzy, my God, what happened?" The dam of Isabel's composure broke. In the warmth of Maria's tiny living room, surrounded by stacks of books and the smell of brewed coffee, she collapsed into her friend's arms and told her everything. The affair, the lies, the phantom pregnancy, the sonogram, and finally the brutal expulsion. When she finished, her voice raw, Maria was radiating a cold fury. That monster. I'm going to write an exposé that will strip him bare. Sterling innovations will be sterling in ruins when I'm done with him." "No," Isabel whispered, wiping her eyes. "Not yet. A public fight is what he understands. It's what Chloe would do. I can't think about that now." Then, taking a shaky breath, she revealed the one part of the story that mattered most. "He kicked me out because he thinks I lied to trap him. Maria, I'm pregnant. For real." Maria's anger instantly melted into profound concern. She pulled Isabel into another hug, this one fiercely protective. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Okay, this changes everything. Forget him. Forget the mansion and the money. This is about you and this baby now. You're safe here. This is your home." The days that followed blurred into a haze of grief and adjustment. The opulence of her former life was stripped away, replaced by the humble reality of Maria's flat. The king-sized bed was replaced by a pull-out sofa. The walk-in closet became a small corner of Maria's wardrobe. The personal chef was replaced by take-out cartons, and Maria's well-intentioned but often burnt attempts at cooking. Yet in this small space, Isabel found something she hadn't had in the mansion for months: safety. She spent the first week in a fog, but Maria was a relentless force of nature. She made sure Isabel ate, forced her on walks through Camden Market, and steadfastly refused to let her drown in sorrow. One morning, Maria came home from a meeting and threw a file onto the coffee table. "Right. First things first. We need to secure you. I called in a favor with a friend who works in family law. She's the best. We need to document everything. Your pregnancy, his assets, Chloe's ridiculously transparent lies. We fight him with facts, Izzy, not with tears." The lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Anya, met with Isabel the next day. For the first time, Isabel laid out her proof. Her doctor's reports, her own sonogram, dated weeks before Chloe's supposed revelation, a timeline of Damien's business trips. Anya listened, her expression growing more resolute with every word. "He hasn't just abandoned his pregnant wife," Anya stated, her voice grim. "He has inflicted extreme emotional distress based on a provable fraud. Isabel, when you're ready, we can make him pay for this. But for now, your health and the baby's health are the priority." The process of disentanglement was brutal. Damien's lawyers sent over a settlement offer. It was, as he promised, generous, a lump sum that would keep her in luxury for life, contingent on her signing an ironclad NDA that would prevent her from ever speaking about Damien Chloe or the circumstances of their separation. It was hush money designed to erase her from his history. Looking at the document, something inside Isabel hardened. The soft, forgiving woman who had curated art and arranged flowers was being forged into something new in the fires of her betrayal. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her child, a child Damien had disowned based on a lie. "I'm not signing it," she told Anya. "Are you sure?" Anya asked gently. "It's a lot of money, Isabel. Security." "It's not security, it's a gag," Isabel replied, her voice clear and firm. "He doesn't get to buy my silence. He doesn't get to erase his child, reject the offer, all of it." She began to build a new life, a small and quiet one. She used the last of her personal savings money from before her marriage to pay her way. She found a new obstetrician in her neighborhood, a kind, motherly woman who knew nothing of the sterling name and simply called her Isabel. Hearing her own name unburdened by his felt like a quiet liberation. She and Maria would talk late into the night. Maria, the journalist, was convinced Chloe's lie had a fatal flaw. "Pregnancies have a deadline, Izzy. 9 months. What's her plan?" A convenient miscarriage in a few months. A premature birth of a doll. The lie is unsustainable. We just have to wait for it to collapse. As her own belly began to show a small, definite curve replacing the flat stomach of her past, Isabel's resolve solidified into steel. Every flutter she felt inside her was a reminder of her truth. Damien could have his empire, his mistress, and his lie. She had something infinitely more real. One afternoon, while walking by a small park, she saw a father pushing his daughter on a swing. The girl's laughter echoed in the crisp autumn air. A pang of sorrow hit her, a vision of the family she was supposed to have. But then she placed a hand on her stomach. The sorrow was quickly replaced by a fierce, primal protectiveness. She would be that father and that mother. She would be enough. The world had taken her husband, her home, and her name. It could not take her strength. It could not take her child. While Isabel was building a new life from the ashes of her old one, Chloe Vance was living a fantasy. She had moved into the Sterling mansion, a triumphant conqueror. She wore Isabel's robes, hosted dinner parties with Damien's business associates, and played the part of the tragic, glowing mother-to-be to perfection. She complained of morning sickness, though the staff noticed she had a hearty appetite in private. She redecorated what was to be the nursery in bold, garish colors that grated on the mansion's quiet elegance. She carried her fake sonogram picture in her wallet, ready to whip it out at the slightest provocation. Damien, consumed by guilt and a desperate need to do the right thing, catered to her every whim. He bought her extravagant gifts, hired a personal nutritionist, and spoke about their child with a forced, almost frantic enthusiasm. But beneath the surface, a seed of unease was beginning to sprout in his own mind. He had loved Isabel's quiet strength and intelligence. Chloe's constant drama and insatiable need for attention were beginning to wear on him. The first major crack in Chloe's story appeared via an unlikely source, Damien's mother, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor was a formidable woman, old money personified. She was shrewd, observant, and had never been particularly fond of Chloe's naked ambition. She had adored Isabel. When Damien told her his version of the story that Isabel had lied about a pregnancy to trap him after he'd honorably confessed to fathering Chloe's child, Eleanor had remained silent, her expression unreadable. She invited Damien and a delicately conditioned Chloe to Sunday lunch at Claridge's, her preferred bastion of tradition and discretion. The lunch was a masterclass in subtle interrogation. "You must be so thrilled, Chloe." Eleanor began, her diamond earrings glittering. "A first grandchild is such a blessing. Have you chosen a hospital? I have an excellent man on Harley Street. He delivered all the royal babies you know." Chloe, momentarily flustered, replied, "Oh, we have someone. A wonderful doctor. Very private." "Of course," Eleanor said smoothly. "And the morning sickness, you poor dear. Is it dreadful? Awful?" Chloe sighed, placing a hand on her perfectly flat stomach. "I can barely keep anything down." She then proceeded to order the lobster thermidor and a side of truffle fries. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Later, as they were leaving, Eleanor took Damien's arm. "She seems remarkably robust for someone so afflicted," she commented dryly. "And for someone supposedly 4 months pregnant, she doesn't seem to have told her tailor. That dress is this season's couture, and it's a perfect sample size." Damien dismissed it as his mother's typical frostiness, but the comment lingered. The lie began to truly unravel a month later. Chloe knew she was approaching the point where her pregnancy would have to become visually obvious. She started stuffing small cushions under her clothes, a clumsy attempt to create a baby bump. The effect was lumpy and unconvincing. The household staff, loyal to the memory of Isabel's kindness, began to whisper. The fatal mistake came from Chloe's own arrogance. Convinced she had everyone fooled, she became careless. She needed a dramatic event, something to cement her status and perhaps rush a wedding. She decided to stage a tragic miscarriage. One evening she called Damien in a panic. "The cramping is back. It's bad. Damien, really bad." He rushed home to find her collapsed at the bottom of the grand staircase, weeping hysterically. I think I'm losing the baby," she sobbed. He scooped her up and raced her to the hospital, the one she had pre-selected. After a frantic hour in the waiting room, a grim-faced Chloe emerged with a doctor who delivered the devastating news that they had lost the baby. Damien was genuinely heartbroken. The phantom child had become real in his mind, a symbol of his mistake and his chance at redemption. He held a weeping Chloe, comforting her, feeling the weight of the tragedy. But Eleanor Sterling was not heartbroken. She was suspicious. A fall down the stairs. A convenient miscarriage, just as the pregnancy should have been showing. It was all too theatrical, too neat. Without telling Damien, she made a phone call. The next day, a discreet private investigator, a former MI6 agent she kept on retainer for family matters, began to look into one Chloe Vance. The results came back a week later in a slim, devastating file. The PI had been thorough. The hospital Chloe had gone to for her initial scare had no record of a Chloe Vance being admitted for pregnancy-related issues that night. She had simply walked into the A&E, complained of stomach pain, and left an hour later. The doctor who had delivered the news of the miscarriage was not an OB-GYN. He was a junior resident in dermatology, who it turned out was Chloe's cousin. The PI had tracked down the graphic designer, who for $200 had expertly photoshopped Chloe's name and a date onto a stock sonogram image she'd downloaded from the internet. Most damning of all, the investigator had accessed flight manifests. The emergency trip to Frankfurt, the private jet had not flown to Germany. Its flight plan, paid for on Damien's corporate account, was a round trip to the Maldives. Eleanor read the report in her silent, sunlit drawing room, her tea growing cold. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded cruelty of the deception was breathtaking. That evening, she summoned Damien to her townhouse. She didn't speak. She simply handed him the file. He read it, his face turning from confusion to disbelief, then to a sickening ashen white. He saw the flight plan to the Maldives, a romantic trip disguised as a work crisis. He saw the invoice from the graphic designer for the ultrasound. He saw the interview with the dermatologist cousin. The entire edifice of his new life built on a foundation of guilt and honor, crumbled into dust. He wasn't the protector of a wronged woman. He was the gullible fool in a con artist's masterpiece. The lie about Chloe's pregnancy was exposed, and in that horrifying moment of clarity, a far more terrible truth crashed down on him. With the force of a physical blow, Isabel had been telling the truth. He had thrown his own pregnant wife, the woman who had only ever loved him, out into the night. He had called her a liar, a manipulator, and had abandoned her and their unborn child based on a cheap, cruel fiction. The weight of his own monstrous actions crushed him. He sank into a chair, the file slipping from his nerveless fingers, the sound of his own ragged breath filling the silent room. He had lost everything, and it was no one's fault but his own. The drive back to the Regent's Park mansion was a blur of self-loathing for Damien. Every street lamp illuminated his foolishness. Every shadow seemed to mock his blindness. He walked into the house not as its master, but as a man returning to the scene of a terrible crime. He found Chloe in the drawing room, sipping champagne and flipping through a catalogue of ridiculously expensive baby furniture, a macabre postscript to her fabricated tragedy. She was playing the part of the grieving mother, but her eyes held a spark of triumph. She believed she was now unassailable, permanently bonded to him through their shared loss. "Darling," she began, a pout on her lips. "I was thinking maybe for the nursery, even though it would be nice to have it ready for when we try again." Damien looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time without the filter of guilt. He saw the greed in her eyes, the hard, calculating lines of her face. He saw the predator, and he felt nothing but disgust. He tossed the investigator's file onto the coffee table in front of her. It landed with a heavy thud. "Frankfurt, Chloe?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Or was the weather better in the Maldives?" Chloe froze the champagne flute halfway to her lips. Her eyes darted to the file, and the color drained from her face. She knew instantly that the game was over. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice losing its sultry confidence. "Oh, I think you do." Damien continued, the fury building in him cold and precise. "I think you know all about the graphic designer you paid to fake a sonogram. You know about your dermatologist cousin at the hospital. You know that you were never, ever pregnant." He leaned, in his voice a venomous whisper. "You played me. You destroyed my marriage, my life, based on a lie. You let me throw my wife, my pregnant wife, out of her home." Chloe's composure shattered. The mask of sophistication fell away to reveal a desperate, cornered creature. "I did it because I love you," she shrieked, her voice shrill. "She didn't appreciate you. She was an anchor holding you back. I was trying to set you free. Love." Damien laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You don't know the meaning of the word. You love my name, my money. You saw a life you wanted, and you decided to burn down anyone who stood in your way." He stood up straight. "Get out." "What?" she gasped. "Get your things, everything you came with, nothing more. My security will watch you pack. I want you out of this house, out of my company, and out of my life within the hour. If I ever see your face or hear your name again, I will release this file to every news outlet in the country. I will sue you for fraud. I will destroy you so completely you won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets. Now get out." Her face contorted in a mask of pure hatred. She scrambled from the room. Damien was left alone, standing in the silent monument to his own stupidity. The victory was ashes in his mouth. Getting rid of Chloe was easy. The real reckoning was yet to come. His first frantic call was to Isabel's parents. They informed him in glacial tones that they had not heard from their daughter since the day she left him, and had no idea where she was. His next calls were to her old friends, the few whose numbers he had. They either hung up on him or told him they had no intention of helping him. He was a pariah. He had been so insulated in his world of wealth, he had no idea how to find a person who didn't want to be found. He hired his own private investigator, a different one with a single desperate instruction. Find Isabel. For weeks, there was nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Damien lived in a state of torment, haunted by the memory of her face as he'd accused her of lying. He wandered the empty rooms of the mansion, each one a testament to her absence. He saw her ghost everywhere in the garden she had loved, in the library, where she used to read, in the curve of the staircase where Chloe had staged her pathetic drama. Then, after nearly a month of searching, the investigator called. "I've found her." Damien's heart leapt. "Where is she? Is she okay? Well, she's not in London," the investigator said carefully. "She's in a small coastal town in Cornwall, Porthleven. She's been living a very quiet life." There was a pause. "There's something else you should know, Mr. Sterling. It seems she's not alone." "What do you mean?" Damien asked, a new cold dread creeping in. "Is she with someone, in a manner of speaking?" the investigator replied. "According to my local sources, she suffered a health scare about a month ago, some complication with the pregnancy. She was helped by a local GP, a Dr. Ben Carter. He's been looking after her since. They've become close. He's a widower, a very respected man in the community. People see them walking on the beach together. He's very protective of her." The image crashed into Damien's mind with the force of a physical blow. Isabel, his Isabel, walking on a beach with another man. A kind man. A doctor who had helped her when he, her husband, had thrown her away. The irony was so cruel, so perfectly just, that it almost broke him. He had created a vacuum, and the world, in its fairness, had filled it with someone better. The investigator continued. "And Mr. Sterling, one more thing. She gave birth 3 days ago. To a boy. Mother and son are both healthy." Damien sank to the floor, the phone clattering from his hand. A son. He had a son. A son who had been born, not in a state-of-the-art private hospital suite, but in a small town by the sea. A son whose first days were being watched over not by his father, but by a kind stranger. He had been so obsessed with uncovering Chloe's lie that he hadn't fully grasped the reality of Isabel's truth. He wasn't just trying to find his wronged wife anymore. He was trying to find his son. He booked a car. He didn't care about Dr. Ben Carter. He didn't care about anything but getting there. He had to see her. He had to see his son. He had to try, however futilely, to beg for a forgiveness he knew he would never deserve. The 5-hour drive to Porthleven was a pilgrimage of shame. The Rolls-Royce, a symbol of his insulated power, felt alien as it navigated the narrow, salt-sprayed lanes of Cornwall. This was a different world, one grounded in earth and sea, not glass and steel. He found the address. The investigator had provided a modest, whitewashed cottage overlooking the harbour. Its small garden, blooming with defiant coastal flowers. It radiated a warmth his mansion had never possessed. His heart hammered against his ribs as he walked to the front door. How could "I'm sorry" ever be enough to bridge the chasm he had created? Before his knuckles could even touch the wood, the door opened. A man with kind, steady eyes stood before him, his posture calm but protective. It was clearly Dr. Ben Carter. "Can I help you?" Ben asked, his voice even. "I'm Damien Sterling." Damien said the name, tasting like ash in his mouth. "I'm here to see Isabel." "She's resting," Ben replied, a wall of quiet defense. "She's been through a great deal. The unspoken accusation because of you was deafening." "Please," Damien begged, stripped of his usual authority. "I need to see my son." From within the cottage, a voice stronger and calmer than he remembered cut through the tension. "It's all right, Ben. Let him in." Damien stepped inside. The cottage was cozy and filled with light. There in an armchair sat Isabel. The haunted look he had last seen was gone, replaced by a profound, serene strength. She looked tired but at peace, and nestled in her arms, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, was a tiny, sleeping baby boy. Damien's breath caught in his throat. He stared at his son, a perfect living testament to the truth he had so cruelly denied. "He's beautiful," Damien whispered the words, thick with unshed tears. "His name is Leo," Isabel said. Her voice was level, holding neither warmth nor malice. It was the voice of a woman who had weathered his storm and reached a distant shore. "Isabel, Damien started his prepared speeches crumbling into dust. "I know everything. About Chloe the lies. I was a blind, arrogant fool. What I did to you is unforgivable. I threw you out. I called you a liar. It was monstrous. I don't expect forgiveness. I just had to see him. To see you. I'll give you anything, the divorce, the house, my entire fortune. Just please let me be his father." Isabel looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at Damien, her eyes clear and assessing. "You think money fixes this? That's always been your answer, hasn't it? Settle the account and move on." She stood up slowly, her movements deliberate. "When you threw me out, you didn't just abandon me. You abandoned him. The stress of what you did sent me into premature labor. Ben found me collapsed in a store. He saved my life," she said, her voice dropping each word a carefully placed stone. "He saved our son's life." Damien visibly flinched, the truth of her words a physical blow. "So no Damien," she continued, standing directly before him. "You don't get to just walk in here and be his father. Now that is a title you have to earn. You don't get to buy your way back." Her gaze was unflinching. "If you want to be in Leo's life, it will be on my terms. You will sell the mansion. I never want to see it again. You will establish an independently managed trust for Leo, and you will get professional help. You will find out why you destroy what is good and real in your life. You will do that work." She paused, letting the verdict settle. "But us? There is no us anymore. You broke that beyond repair. That is a consequence you have to accept." Her expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with a final heartbreaking finality. She held the bundled baby out to him. "Now," she said quietly, "if you are ready, you may hold your son." With trembling hands, Damien Sterling reached out and took the small, warm weight of his child into his arms. Looking down at the tiny, perfect face, the master of a global empire broke down and wept not for the life he had lost, but for the immense, terrifying journey of redemption. He was only just beginning. And so Damien Sterling's gilded world was shattered not by a market crash, but by the quiet, unshakable power of the truth. He learned the hardest lesson of all. that trust once broken cannot be bought back. It must be rebuilt painstakingly, with actions, not words. The story of Damien, Isabel, and Chloe isn't just about a mistress's lie. It's about the devastating consequences of choosing arrogance over intuition, and the incredible resilience of a woman who found her own strength when the world tried to take everything from her. What does redemption truly look like? Is it ever fully possible? Isabel has given Damien a path, but the journey is his to walk alone. This story is a powerful reminder that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, and family, are also the most fragile.